Hello, A.G.E.S students. Welcome to A.G.E.S in Minutes, where I review topics that are covered in class in only minutes. As always, if you haven't completed the assigned readings, please pause the video, complete the readings, and then return. The topic of today's lesson is Keynes versus Hayek. Throughout the video, I'm going to provide you with answers that these economists would give during a debate. Please pause the video and read the responses. If you wish to write anything down, I would recommend that you write down the red font. Later, I will provide some clarifying points after each of the discussion points. So who are these people? Please pause the video and take a moment to read about John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes was a charismatic economist. He was an excellent communicator, and his message of having the government help those who were unemployed, particularly during recession, was appealing to many people, both in and outside of the government. Additionally, his message is fairly straightforward and easy to understand. Now, please pause the video and take a moment to read about Friedrich Hayek. F.A. Hayek was an Austrian born in 1899. His country of origin is important for two considerations. First, he was a citizen of Austria from his birth in 1899 to 1938 when he immigrated to England prior to World War II. Hayek experienced firsthand how dictators come to power, and he noticed that they first make promises and give things to people. This is why he claims that government assistance is the first step to the road to serfdom. Partly because of a language barrier, and partly because of the complexities of his ideas, his messages were often overshadowed by the messages of John Maynard Keynes. It wasn't until the 1970s that he won the Nobel Prize in economics. Both economists personify the contrasting views on the government's role in the economy. One additional note, these two were very good friends, and even though they agreed on very little, they still respected each other and appreciated each other's positions. So the first question would be, what is the proper role of government in the economy? Please pause the video and take a moment to read John Maynard Keynes' ideas. Keynes would say, hey, look, this is not about a government takeover. It's just simply trying to utilize the tools that they have at their disposal, whether it's cutting taxes or increasing spending. Please take a moment to read Hayek's response. I don't think Hayek is completely opposed to government assistance. Where he has problems is understanding how can somebody know exactly what to do and how to do it. The economy is an extremely complex arrangement. Millions and hundreds of millions of people making decisions every day. And as a result, we have prices, we have certain supply and demand. And how could one person or one relatively small group of people in Washington, D.C. know exactly what buttons to push and what strings to pull? So the next question may be, why do economies experience contraction or recession? John Maynard Keynes' response. Please pause the video and read his response. To understand this response, you have to first go back and understand the aggregate market, the idea that there's an aggregate supply and an aggregate demand. An aggregate means the market for everything. So essentially what Keynes is saying here is there's been a shock to the country's ability to to demand things, right? People are no longer buying, okay? And because people are no longer buying, the businesses are going to no longer produce. And when they no longer produce, they're going to lay workers off. And then those workers, in turn, will no longer demand. Here's Hayek's response. Please take a moment to pause the video and read it. His response would be something along the lines of, look, contractions are natural in an economy. They serve the purpose of getting rid of, malinvestments or weaker businesses that are wasting resources. The truth of the matter is, though, if you'd ask Hayek, he'd say, look, recessions and contractions shouldn't last very long. They should not be too prolonged as the economy rights itself. So what is the solution to stopping recession? According to John Maynard Keynes. Please pause the video and read his answer. I think simply put, Keynes would say, look, we have to boost the aggregate demand. We have to get people to be able and willing to spend money. And if they won't spend money, then the government has to spend money. Okay, another way we can do it is also have the Federal Reserve release money into circulation. If there's more money out there, people are spending money. And when they're spending money, then the companies will need to produce. And when they need to produce, then of course they need to hire people to help with that increased production. And this will boost our aggregate demand. Some people might suggest, well, wait a minute, if you're cutting taxes but then increasing government spending, wouldn't the government run deficits? And he would agree that yes, although not ideal, deficit spending is acceptable as a short-term solution. And as he would say, in the long run, we're all dead. Let's focus on the here and the now. F.A. Hayek's response would be the following. Please pause the video and read his response. Hayek's response would be, look, the best thing the government can do is just get out of the way and let the market work and let entrepreneurs enter into the market and create new goods and services at cheaper prices. And this will be the best way to really make progress with the economy. In terms of government spending or manipulating how much money and the prices of things, these sort of actions by the government will create a false sense of security, and what will end up happening is we will be spending way too much money on goods and services that we may or may not need. Prices will begin to soar, and then those investments will no longer get finished, and then you see housing projects and you see other business expansion not finished, and that's called a malinvestment, and they absolutely wreck economies and make recessions even worse. So in terms of self-correcting or returning back to equilibrium, both of these economists have very different ideas. First, John Maynard Keynes. Please pause the video. Keynes does not have as much faith in prices as Hayek does. He believes that people are by nature self-centered and want to make sure that they do not experience any more pain than they need to. They're unwilling to accept lower wages, and in turn, then businesses are unwilling to charge lower prices. As a result, prices and wages are sticky and do not adjust to the environment as quickly as maybe depicted in the typical supply and demand curves. He also believes that those who save their money actually slow down the progress as well, as there's less money being circulated within the economy. Please take a moment to pause the video and read F.A. Hayek's response. Hayek would say, listen, we have to have more faith in the market and prices. Prices are the result of billions and billions of individual interactions and variables, and it's very, very difficult for anybody, if not impossible, to know what the proper price is. And to assume that prices are sticky, it may be true that prices and wages may be sticky in some markets, but in terms of the entire economy, not necessarily. We have to allow prices to work, and then they will fall or rise depending on the situation, not just in the product market, but also in the resource market. This will allow the economy to return back to equilibrium. Up to this point, we've talked a lot about spending money and Keynes' views on spending money. But what about saving your money? Does saving your money hurt the economy? Please take a moment to pause the video and read John Maynard Keynes' response. Keynes believes that if we all save our money, it's called the paradox of thrift. That yes, as individuals, saving your money may not be a bad idea for something in the future, but if everybody in the economy is saving their money because they're worried about the future, then we're not going to be spending it, and then our aggregate demand is going to suffer a shock, and then therefore more people will get laid off. So again, he called it the paradox of thrift, almost kind of like a big old prisoner's dilemma. Take a moment to read Hayek's response to that. Hayek would disagree. I think Hayek would say that Keynes' response is somewhat baloney. In that, yes, if we're not spending our money, we may not, the companies may not be getting it through spending, but if we're not spending it, then most likely we're saving it. And so long as we're not saving it in a piggy bank and instead we're using a real bank, that those businesses can go ahead and get the loan. So they get our money anyhow. They can either get our money by us spending it and giving it to them, or they can get our money by them borrowing it from a bank. But either way, the money will still enter into the economy, and then the businesses can make investments for future restructuring of the economy. So what is the proper role of government during expansion? Please take a moment to pause the video and read John Maynard Keynes' response. I think Keynes would simply say it's time to pay back some of our debts, right? Pay back the deficit spending. So we can cut government spending. Why does the government need to spend money when we're doing it perfectly well, ourselves? And two, interest rates can begin now to rise, and so it becomes more expensive to borrow money, and this should slow down the economy as it approaches full employment. Please pause the video and take a look at F.A. Hayek's response. I think the big idea about Hayek's response is, look, very few politicians get elected by promising to raise taxes and cut meaningful programs. As a result, taxes don't get raised and those programs stick around. As a result, then, we have an economy that's growing, but then we also have significant amount of government spending, and we have a lot more spending that would take place because of the lower interest rates because they're not natural. As a result, we're all seeking resources for our own projects, and prices begin to soar, and then the bubble bursts, and then we find ourselves in a much deeper, darker recession than the original one. So here are some concluding or departing thoughts. First, John Maynard Keynes. Please take a moment to pause the video and read Keynes's ideas. I think simply put, Keynes would say, look, governments work, markets don't. If we're going to sit around waiting for markets to reach equilibrium again, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to go through pain and suffering that may not have to. Here's Hayek's response. Please take a moment to pause the video and read it. I think Hayek's response would be quite the opposite. He'd say, look, markets work, but government doesn't. I think Hayek would say, look, to John Maynard Keynes, I'm sure you have really great intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. There's nobody who has enough knowledge to be able to make great decisions when it comes to an economy as sophisticated as the modern economies of today. Allow the market to make these decisions and work itself out of these recessions. If we want government or individuals in government to make these decisions, they're bound to make mistakes, which will end up making things even worse. Thank you.